Tres Caracos. 3 hearts. A name that resonates like a line from a poem, softly spoken at twilight. It evokes a sense of gentleness, warmth, and vitality. In the early 1940s, it was a tranquil Brazilian town, small, sleepy, and unhurried. A place where neighbors recognized each other's footsteps long before they saw their faces. A place where children ran barefoot along dusty roads, where evenings were filled with the comforting aroma of wood smoke and the distant hum of radios. And in this unassuming town, on October 23, 1940, a child was born who would eventually transform the rhythm of the world's most cherished game. He was named Edson Arantes do Nascimento, but the world would come to know him by a name that resonated across continents: Pelé. His family's home was humble: wooden walls, a small kitchen, a simple bedroom, but it overflowed with the warmth that only love can provide. His mother, Dona Celeste, was the quiet pillar of the household. She believed in discipline, kindness, and raising children with dignity, even in times of financial hardship. His father, João Ramos, known as Dondinho, had music in his voice and dreams in his heart. He had once been a footballer, skilled enough to make crowds roar with excitement, graceful enough to earn admiration. However, fate had curtailed his career with a knee injury, forcing him into modest jobs to support his family. Yet football remained a constant in his life. It would become the bond that connected father and son. Life in Tres Caracos was challenging, but it was also pure. The town was encircled by rolling hills, patches of forest, and stretches of red dirt that stained the feet of every child who played there. There were no paved fields, no formal playgrounds, just open spaces and boundless imagination. Little Edson was a curious boy. He thrived on movement, running, climbing, dancing through the streets with the carefree spirit that only youth can bring. He cherished laughter and the stories shared by the elders. But above all, he adored the sound of a ball, even if that ball wasn't truly a ball. Due to the family's financial constraints, Edson created his own version. A sock filled with rags. A grapefruit. A tightly bound bundle of old newspapers secured with string. These makeshift balls behaved differently, unpredictably, wobbling, bouncing in unusual ways, forcing him to adapt at every moment. Unbeknownst to him, Pelé's initial sparks of brilliance were being shaped in these makeshift games. However, the most crucial lessons were not about ball control. They were lessons about life. Edson observed his father laboring long hours and his mother stretching every penny to feed the family. He absorbed humility, empathy, and gratitude. He learned to assist wherever possible, fetching water, cleaning floors, selling peanuts, and polishing shoes in the marketplace to earn a few coins. He never voiced complaints. He never felt impoverished. He felt vibrant. And every free moment was dedicated to football. One of the pivotal memories from Pelé's childhood occurred in 1950 when Brazil hosted the World Cup. Radios buzzed with anticipation, neighbors gathered to listen to the national team's games. Even children who didn't grasp football could sense the excitement in the atmosphere. On the day of the final, Brazil versus Uruguay, the entire nation held its breath. Brazil needed only a draw to claim the championship. Their victory seemed certain. The country celebrated prematurely. But football is a weaver of unexpected tales. Brazil lost 2-1 in what became known as the Maracanazo, the most significant heartbreak in Brazilian sports history. That evening, young Edson witnessed something he had never seen before. His father, the strongest man he knew, sat silently with tears streaming down his face. The boy didn't fully grasp the strategies of the game, the weight of national disappointment, or the enormity of the loss. But he understood sorrow. He felt it profoundly. With the pure innocence of a child who believes in endless possibilities, he reached out to his father's arm and said, "Don't cry, Papai. One day I will win the World Cup for you." This wasn't a grand proclamation. It wasn't something he had practiced. It was a soft expression of love. A child attempting to mend the heart of the man he looked up to the most. Years later, after securing 3 World Cup trophies, Pelé would reflect that this promise ignited a quiet passion within him. As time went on, Edson became stronger, quicker, and more self-assured. The laughter echoing in the streets during his games transformed into applause. Older boys sought him out for their teams. Adults stopped to admire his play. There was something about his movements that felt effortless, unforced. It was as if the game flowed through him, rather than around him. He didn't merely pursue the ball. He danced with it. He didn't just run. He glided. He didn't merely dream. He had faith. Football evolved from a simple childhood hobby into something that felt like a calling. Tres Carracos served as the gentle backdrop of Pelé's formative years. It molded him, grounded him, provided him with the warmth, resilience, and heart that would carry him through the challenges of fame and the burden of history. Before he became Pelé, the king of football, he was Edson, the barefoot boy with a sock ball and a promise made to his father. As he moved toward a future that no one could yet foresee, the world around him had already begun to shift, quietly, subtly, awaiting the moment when the boy from 3 Hearts would step onto a field far from home and introduce himself not just to a stadium, but to the world. If Pelé's early years in Tres Carracos ignited his passion for football, then Bauru, the city his family relocated to during his childhood, was where that passion truly began to flourish, expand, and transform into something undeniable. Bauru was a bustling, vibrant place, much larger and noisier than his hometown. Its streets were alive with vendors, workers, and children enjoying every available space. For young Edson, moving here felt like entering a realm brimming with opportunities. Though he had little in terms of possessions, he possessed something far more valuable: time, a ragged ball, and boundless energy. In Bauru, every street corner was a potential football field. An alley could transform into a grand stadium. An empty lot could become the site of a fierce tournament. A wall could act as a training partner for hours on end. The neighborhood kids were always inventing new games: one-touch challenges, narrow field skirmishes, shooting contests, dribbling sprints. Edson was always in the thick of it. Sometimes he played barefoot, other times in tattered shoes held together by sheer determination, playing until the sun dipped below the rooftops. He was smaller, leaner, and younger than most of the other boys. Yet, what he lacked in stature, he compensated for with remarkable creativity. He didn't charge at defenders, he glided around them. He didn't shoot out of panic, he aimed with purpose, always seeking to command the ball. Even in these casual matches, there was something about him that caught attention. Older kids began to select him first. Onlookers, neighbors, parents, shopkeepers, would gather to witness the action. Occasionally, games would pause as someone shouted, "Look at what Edson just did." He remained oblivious to the spectators. He was immersed in his own universe, dancing with the ball. Ultimately, his standing in the community caught the eye of local coaches. He became a member of a youth team named 7 de Setembro, a community club recognized for providing children with structure, uniforms, and a sense of belonging. In this environment, he acquired discipline, punctuality, warming up, stretching, and heeding instructions. Training sessions familiarized him with passing drills, shooting practices, and fundamental tactics. His comprehension of the game grew deeper. His movements became more precise. However, the most significant turning point occurred when he joined a team called Bequinho, named after a local bar owner who supported the youth players. Bequinho was led by a coach who would profoundly impact Pelé's life. Waldemar de Brito. Waldemar de Brito was not just any coach. He was a former football star, a man who once donned the golden yellow of the Brazilian national team. He had journeyed across the globe, faced formidable defenders, and grasped the nuanced details that distinguished good players from exceptional ones. When de Brito first encountered Pelé, the young boy was juggling a rag ball near a marketplace. His touches were light, controlled, and rhythmic, akin to music. While people talked about his talent, de Brito perceived more than just talent. He recognized a spark. He observed Pelé during a full match and was amazed. The boy possessed an instinct that he had witnessed in very few players. His vision, timing, and unpredictability, these were attributes that could not be taught. They were innate gifts. After the match, de Brito approached Pelé's mother, Celeste. "Your son," he said to her, his voice calm and assured, "will become the greatest footballer in the world." It may have sounded like an overstatement, but he was sincere in his belief. Under de Brito's guidance, Pelé absorbed lessons that transcended the playground. Training evolved into a more structured and rigorous regimen. Controlling the ball under pressure. Dribbling through confined spaces. Finishing from challenging angles. Improving balance and reaction time. Learning when to refrain from dribbling. Studying the movements of defenders. De Brito instilled humility in him, teaching how to manage fame if it arrived, how to honor opponents, and how to concentrate on self-improvement instead of merely celebrating. One of de Brito's cherished lessons was straightforward. Play with joy. If you lose joy, you lose everything. These words resonated with Pelé throughout his life. By the time Pelé turned 14, he had become a local icon. His reputation spread well beyond Bauru. People from neighboring towns flocked to see him play. Local newspapers began referring to him as the "miracle boy" or "little Edson who plays like a man." His team, Bequinho, excelled in youth tournaments. Pelé netted goal after goal, sometimes maneuvering past 5 or 6 defenders, other times launching long-range shots, and occasionally scoring from seemingly impossible angles. His teammates often joked that Pelé didn't play football, football followed his command. During this period, he also joined an indoor football team, futsal. The quicker pace, smaller court, and confined dribbling spaces significantly enhanced his reflexes. Futsal required rapid decision-making, and Pelé flourished. He learned to respond in mere fractions of a second, how to evade pressure, and how to finish instantly. He later remarked that futsal was the most beneficial aspect of his youth training. Despite his immense talent, life remained modest. Pelé continued to support his family. He worked as a shoeshine boy. He sold peanuts and sweets. He took on small jobs around the town. Every coin counted. Every effort contributed. He was unaware that soon, his family would never face hardship again. Yet, even during tough times, he maintained a positive outlook. His father was his biggest supporter, and his mother, though protective, began to understand that her son was not just another boy with a passion for football, he was something extraordinary. By 1956, Pelé was poised for a larger platform. His fame had spread beyond Bauru. He sought a club with a professional framework, proper training, medical assistance, and visibility. Waldemar de Brito made a daring choice. He would take Pelé to Santos FC, one of Brazil's rising giants. However, there was a challenge. Pelé's family was impoverished, and the journey to Santos, hundreds of kilometers away, required funds they lacked. De Brito acted without hesitation. He covered the costs himself. Before their departure, he told Pelé, "You are prepared. The world awaits you." In the early morning, with a small bag containing a few clothes and a heart brimming with hope, Pelé boarded the bus alongside his mentor. The journey to Santos was lengthy, primarily on dirt roads, meandering through farms, villages, and forests. Pelé gazed at the scenery and pondered whether his life was on the verge of transformation, or if he would quietly return home after failing the trial. He was unaware that he was heading toward the club where he would forge his legacy, revolutionize football, and become a worldwide icon. He didn't realize that the 15-year-old boy from a destitute family was about to enter a new realm, one filled with stadium lights, cheering crowds, and a history waiting to unfold. He only understood one thing. He cherished football above all else. And he was ready to invest everything he possessed. As the bus neared the coastal city of Santos, Pelé sensed something awaken within him, a peculiar blend of excitement, fear, and fate. The saga of Pelé, the footballer, was on the verge of commencing. When Pelé first set foot in Santos in 1956, the city felt entirely unlike the towns he had previously known. The scent of the ocean lingered in the salty breeze, fishing boats scattered along the shore, and the bustling port buzzed with life. Everything appeared bigger, louder, and more vibrant compared to Bauru or Tres Caracos. This was a land of possibilities, a place where aspirations could flourish if given even the slightest opportunity. Pelé stepped off the bus clutching a small bag, a whirlwind of excitement and apprehension swirling within him. Waldemar de Brito walked alongside him like a protective figure, leading him toward the club that would transform his life, Santos Futebol Clube. The training ground of the club was humble by modern standards, but to Pelé, it seemed vast. The field was wider than any he had ever played on, the nets were immaculate, and the grass felt plush beneath his feet. Just the sight of it made his heart race. He wasn't yet a Santos player. He wasn't anyone yet. He was just a slender teenager hoping to find his fortune. During the trial session, Pelé glanced around and noticed many boys, older, stronger, taller, all sharing the same dream. Many looked at him with skepticism. What could this frail little kid from Bauru possibly achieve? But Pelé remained unfazed. Deep within him, he felt something different, something he couldn't articulate, a quiet confidence. A belief that if he could just touch the ball, even once, he could reveal to everyone who he really was. As the trial commenced, the coaches had the players engage in small-sided matches. Pelé waited nervously for his chance. Once he stepped onto the field, everything shifted. His first touch captured immediate attention. It was gentle, accurate, almost tender. The ball seemed to cling to his foot as if it wished to accompany him. He weaved through tight spaces, executed unexpected passes, and scored a goal within minutes. The coaches exchanged glances. Then they observed more intently. After a few additional plays, their doubt transformed into amazement. One coach murmured, "We are witnessing something exceptional." Another agreed, "This boy, he perceives the game in a unique way." By the conclusion of the session, it was clear. Santos had to sign him. They not only proposed a contract, they wanted him on their team right away. Pelé had passed the evaluation, not through size or strength, but through brilliance. Joining Santos FC was a challenge. Pelé was just 15. For the first time, he lived away from his family, sharing a cramped room with older players in the club's accommodation. He longed for his mother's cooking, his father's voice, and the comfort of home. Yet, he had a new family now, teammates who quickly saw his potential. Some looked up to him. Others playfully teased him. But all held him in high regard once they witnessed his skills on the field. He trained with unwavering dedication, arriving early and leaving late. Coaches were struck by his desire to grow. He absorbed tactical guidance, analyzed the movements of seasoned strikers, and practiced finishing from every conceivable angle. Each day marked progress. On September 7, 1956, Pelé made his debut with the first team in a friendly match against Corinthians of Santo André. He felt anxious. His heart raced as the crowd murmured, curious about the slender newcomer donning the Santos jersey. But when Pelé stepped onto the field, something extraordinary occurred. He didn't falter under pressure. He didn't hesitate. He played instinctively, as if he was meant to be there. And then, it happened. He scored. A clean, instinctive finish. A moment that appeared simple, yet was truly historic. Pelé's inaugural goal for Santos. The first of over 1,000 goals in his remarkable career. Initially, fans applauded politely. They had no idea they had just witnessed the emergence of a legend. Even Pelé was unaware. But something within him felt right, as if a door had swung open. Pelé's rise was swift. Too swift for some. In just a few months, he transitioned from being a substitute to a starter. Within a year, he was consistently finding the back of the net. By the time he turned 16, he had already become the league's top scorer. It was hard for anyone to believe. Newspapers ran headlines dubbing him the Black Pearl, the Boy Wonder, and the future of Brazil. His name echoed throughout the country. Pelé managed his newfound fame with incredible poise. He remained unfazed by accolades. He didn't allow success to swell his pride. He continued to be the same modest boy from Three Hearts, staying grounded by the values his parents had taught him. During his formative years at Santos, Pelé's legendary style began to emerge. He was unpredictable. Defenders were left guessing whether he would dribble, pass, shoot, or deceive them with a feint. He was balanced, rarely losing possession despite his slender build. He was graceful, every action appeared effortless. He was exuberant, he played with a grin, always exuding enthusiasm. Pelé wasn't merely playing football, he was transforming it. He fused technique with creativity, discipline with imagination, and instinct with intellect. As Pelé's performances became increasingly remarkable, scouts from Brazil's national team began to take notice. They recognized something unprecedented. The fearless composure of a seasoned player embodied in a teenager. He played like someone who had experienced countless footballing lives, yet he was still just a teenager. In 1957, at the age of 16, Pelé was chosen for the Brazilian national team. He scored in his debut match against Argentina. Let that resonate. A 16-year-old boy, scoring in a senior international match against Brazil's most formidable rivals. He was the youngest to achieve this feat. And he did it with the same grace he had displayed on the streets of Bauru. The momentum was building. The world was unaware. But one of the greatest athletes in history was on the verge of stepping onto the global stage. The late 1950s saw Santos emerge as one of the most formidable clubs globally. With Pelé shining brightly as their star player, they began to take control of Brazilian tournaments and international friendlies. The crowd swelled in size. Newspapers published more articles. Football enthusiasts traveled great distances just to see him play. Santos recognized they had a gem on their hands, and they crafted a team that maximized Pelé's abilities: fast, fluid, attacking football that captivated fans and overwhelmed rivals. And Pelé? He seized every chance. He scored, assisted, dazzled, and inspired. Santos had discovered their prodigy. Brazil had found their treasure. Football had uncovered its future. By the time Pelé reached 17, he was more than just an athlete. He had become a beacon of hope. A beacon for the underprivileged. A beacon for children with dreams bigger than their realities. A beacon for a nation still recovering from the sorrow of 1950. A beacon of a burgeoning Brazilian identity and cultural pride. Santos refined him. Brazil welcomed him. The world was on the verge of recognizing him. As 1958 drew near, a sense of quiet excitement filled the atmosphere. A World Cup was on the horizon, and Brazil was in need of someone, extraordinary. They were unaware at the time. But Pelé was prepared. By the time 1958 rolled around, Pelé had already become a sensation among Brazilian football enthusiasts. At just 17 years old, he exhibited a level of maturity that belied his youth. Santos fans revered him, while rivals dreaded facing him. Coaches recognized they were witnessing a talent unlike anything Brazil had encountered before. However, beyond Brazil's borders, Pelé remained an enigma, a mere whisper, a fleeting rumor, a name mentioned by those fortunate enough to have seen him play but not yet convinced of his greatness. That was on the verge of changing. The shadow of 1950 still loomed over Brazil. The Maracanazo had not faded from the nation's collective memory. Each World Cup carried a burden that Brazil struggled to lift. The country was yearning, desperate, for redemption. The squad heading to Sweden in 1958 was formidable. Didi, Vava, Zagallo, Nilton Santos, some of the greatest talents of their era. Yet among them was a boy who barely had facial hair. Pelé had joined the national team the previous year and had already made a significant impression. But just weeks before the tournament, he sustained a knee injury that almost sidelined him. Doctors were uncertain. Coaches were hesitant. The media questioned the wisdom of bringing an injured youth to the most prestigious tournament in the world. But the players, they understood. They had trained alongside him. They had witnessed the spark. They implored the coach, Vicente Fiola, to include him. And so he went, limping, unsure, yet carrying a quiet intensity within. Upon Brazil's arrival in Sweden, many Scandinavian journalists observed something peculiar: a young, bashful, smiling boy who resembled more of a ball boy than a football player. Pelé's youth was striking. His naivety stood in stark contrast to the seasoned, toughened players on the squad. Pelé took in everything: the chilly air, the serene streets, the contemporary stadiums. Everything was novel to him, but he adapted swiftly. During training, he astonished his teammates with his precise touches and boundless energy. Still, the coaches remained cautious. Pelé did not participate in the first two group matches. Whispers began to spread. Is he too young? Is he still injured? Pelé was aware of the skepticism surrounding him, yet it did not deter him. He was confident that his moment would arrive. The locker room moment. Prior to the third group match against the Soviet Union, the iconic defender Nilton Santos approached Coach Fiola. He placed his hand on the coach's shoulder and stated, "The boy plays today." This was not merely a suggestion. It was a proclamation from one of Brazil's most esteemed footballers. The coach acknowledged with a nod. Pelé was set to take the field. As Pelé entered the pitch, the brisk Scandinavian air struck his face. His heart raced. The stadium lights appeared more brilliant than any he had previously encountered. The World Cup, the aspiration he had vowed to achieve for his father, was no longer a far-off dream. It was present. It was happening now. Although he didn't score, he played with elegance, weaving past defenders, connecting passes, and generating opportunities. The world began to take notice. European reporters hurriedly jotted down notes. Who is this boy? Who plays with such liberty? Where did he come from? The response was straightforward. 3 hearts. Brazil faced Wales in the quarterfinals. The match was intense and closely contested. Wales defended with great organization, and Brazil found it challenging to penetrate their defense. Then, in the 66th minute, something extraordinary occurred. Pelé received the ball within the penalty area. He controlled it with his chest. Let it bounce. Outmaneuvered a defender with a delicate flick. And with the poise of a player far older than his years, he sent the ball into the net. Brazil erupted in celebration. The stadium exploded with joy. The world had just witnessed Pelé's inaugural World Cup goal. He was just 17 years and 239 days old. The youngest player ever to score in a World Cup knockout match. Next up was France, a formidable team featuring one of the greatest forwards of the era, Just Fontaine. However, the match was dominated by the young star from Santos. Pelé netted a hat-trick, 3 stunning goals. 1, a rebound he converted with incredible reflexes. 2, a volley he executed with flawless timing. 3, a solo effort after outmaneuvering several defenders. Commentators were left in disbelief. He plays like a man, one remarked. "He plays like a genius," another corrected him. "No, he plays like something we've never witnessed before," said a third. Brazil triumphed 5-2. Pelé had made his mark. Not subtly, but with dazzling brilliance. On June 29, 1958, Brazil took on Sweden in the World Cup final. The stadium was awash with yellow and blue, the colors representing both countries. The tension was palpable. At just 17 years old, Pelé was on the verge of playing the most significant match of his life. Brazil fell behind early, trailing 1-0. The atmosphere grew tense. Yet, Brazil fought back, scoring twice before the halftime break. Then came the moment that would be etched in football history. A high ball descended into the Swedish penalty area. Pelé soared, controlled it with his chest, and let it drop. A defender charged at him. Pelé flicked the ball over the defender's head, a display of pure creativity, and volleyed it into the net with impeccable technique. The crowd gasped. The stadium trembled. Even the Swedish fans applauded. It was more than just a goal. It was a revelation. A second goal from Pelé secured Brazil's victory. The final whistle sounded. Brazil were crowned world champions for the first time. In the aftermath, photographs captured a moment destined to endure. Pelé, exhausted, overwhelmed, weeping in the embrace of his teammate Gilmar. A boy had transformed into a hero. A nation had found its redemption. And the world had been introduced to the one who would be known as O Rei, the King. Pelé came back to Brazil as a national icon. Crowds welcomed the team like they were royalty. Newspapers couldn't get enough of his name. Children decorated their walls with his posters. Santos FC suddenly became one of the most famous football clubs globally. However, for Pelé, life didn't transform overnight. He still felt youthful. He still called his parents daily. He still felt like the same boy who once polished shoes in Bauru. Yet, deep down, he realized something significant. The world now anticipated greatness from him. He had made his mark in history. And history expected him to continue on this path. When Pelé came back from the 1958 World Cup, he was no longer the slender young forward taking on older boys in the dusty streets. He had become a global phenomenon. A star at just 17. Yet, as he stepped back onto the training grounds of Santos FC, he still experienced the comforting familiarity of home. Santos welcomed him wholeheartedly. They didn't merely view him as a player, they regarded him as their prized possession. What ensued was one of the most remarkable eras in club football history. The Pelé era. Prior to Pelé, Santos was known for being respected, strong, and competitive. With Pelé, Santos transformed into an unstoppable force. Their offense became the most feared in the world. Their style of play, quick, fluid, and inventive, attracted crowds everywhere. Goals came pouring in like a waterfall. Pelé wasn't the only star on the team. He was surrounded by brilliance. Coutinho, his legendary strike partner. Pepe, the dynamic winger. Zito, the midfield maestro. Dorval, the graceful creator. Gilmar, the dependable goalkeeper. Together, they formed a squad so talented that even the European giants found it difficult to compete against them. Between 1960 and 1965, Santos achieved nearly every accolade they pursued. Numerous Campeonato Paulista titles. Taça Brazil Championships. 2 Copa Libertadores titles, 1962, 1963. 2 Intercontinental Cups against Europe's champions. And all of this occurred while they toured the globe, playing friendly matches that sometimes held as much significance as official finals, because wherever Santos played, stadiums were packed. Pelé's presence ensured it. Pelé scored goals of every kind. Powerful long-range shots. Delicate chips. Acrobatic bicycle kicks. Dribbles that sliced through entire defenses. Headers that seemed impossible for someone of his stature. However, it wasn't just the sheer number of goals that solidified his legacy, it was the artistry of his play. He infused creativity into football like samba infused rhythm into music. He moved with the grace of a dancer. He envisioned passes that others couldn't even fathom. He played as if led by an internal symphony that no one else could hear. Defenders frequently echoed a common sentiment. You could mark Pelé for 89 minutes, and he'd obliterate you in the 90th. Santos FC, fueled by Pelé's stardom, transformed into a worldwide sensation. They embarked on tours to Africa, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, North America, the Caribbean. Each tour became a significant cultural phenomenon. In various nations, the arrival of Santos felt akin to a festive occasion. Schools let out early. People climbed trees. Some trekked miles on foot. A well-known tale from Nigeria recounts. In 1969, amidst the Nigerian Civil War, it is said that a 48-hour ceasefire was announced so both factions could witness Pelé and Santos play in Lagos. Whether this is a myth or reality, it underscores a singular truth. Pelé's presence had the power to halt conflict, because he was a figure for all. The ultimate challenge arose in the Intercontinental Cup, a tournament that matched the champions of South America against those of Europe. In Brazil's second match, Pelé took a long-range shot. His body twisted in an awkward manner. His groin muscle tore. A sharp pain surged through him. He collapsed. He attempted to rise again, but failed. The crowd fell into silence. Brazilian fans watching from around the globe held their breath. Doctors hurried to assess his condition. The verdict, a serious muscle injury. Pelé's tournament had come to an abrupt end. He was heartbroken. He yearned to play through the agony. He pleaded with the coaches to allow him to return, even if it meant limping back onto the field. But they declined. It was too risky. Thus, Pelé, at the height of his youthful prowess, was forced to watch the remainder of the World Cup from the sidelines. He sat on the bench, wrapped in a jacket, cheering for his teammates, encouraging them, applauding every goal. His disappointment ran deep, yet he never allowed his teammates to feel anything but his unwavering support. Even without Pelé, Brazil's squad shone brightly, all thanks to the brilliance of Garrincha, a player who was as talented as he was unpredictable. Garrincha took charge of Brazil's offense with remarkable skill. He scored, assisted, dribbled, and played with a flair that kept the team energized. Ultimately, Brazil clinched their second consecutive World Cup title. Pelé celebrated the triumph with immense pride. But deep down, a small part of him ached with desire. He had envisioned leading Brazil once more. He yearned to be on the field. He wanted to demonstrate that 1958 was not merely luck or a miracle, but the start of something even more significant. Instead, he had to watch the final from the sidelines, joyful, yet wounded. The years following 1962 were laden with pressure. Pelé had already become the most renowned athlete in the world. Newspapers chronicled his every move. Stadiums filled up because of him. Santos arranged match after match, tour after tour, pushing Pelé to his physical limits. He was still young, yet he was already overworked. By 1966, the burden of expectation had intensified. That year, the World Cup was hosted in England. Brazil was aiming for a third title. The world was eager for Pelé's comeback. However, instead of glory, the tournament would bring some of the most painful memories of Pelé's life. The atmosphere in England was charged. European teams were resolute in their mission to thwart Brazil at any cost. And Pelé, the most celebrated player in the world, became a target. In Brazil's opening match against Bulgaria, Pelé faced brutal fouls. He was kicked, shoved, and pushed to the ground repeatedly. At one point, a knee struck directly against his thigh, an injury that left him limping. Yet, in that match, he managed to score a stunning free kick, showcasing that even in agony, his talent shone through. But the mistreatment persisted. And shockingly, the referees did nothing. With Pelé injured from the Bulgaria match, Brazil opted to rest him in their second game against Hungary. Brazil suffered a 3-1 defeat. It became evident, Brazil needed Pelé. But Pelé was not completely healed. Yet, driven by his competitive nature, Pelé was determined to participate in the third match, facing Portugal. This game became notorious in the annals of football history. Portugal boasted an exceptional team, spearheaded by Eusebio. However, rather than solely depending on their talent, they targeted Pelé with physical aggression. Kick after kick. Foul after foul. Blow after blow. Pelé fought to remain upright, but the assaults were unyielding. At one moment, a vicious tackle sent him crashing to the turf. He grasped his knee in pain. He attempted to rise. He endeavored to press on. But the harsh reality was clear: he could hardly walk. Yet, Brazil had exhausted their substitutions. Pelé lingered on the pitch as a limping shadow of his former self, a target, no longer a threat. The audience in Liverpool watched with unease. Commentators voiced their indignation. Even the Portuguese supporters were taken aback by the severity of the game. When the final whistle sounded, Brazil was eliminated from the World Cup. Pelé exited the field, limping and relying on his teammates for support. His tears were not from physical suffering, but from emotional ruin. In the locker room, Pelé crumpled in despair. His legs were covered in bruises. His knee was inflamed. His ankle was twisted. His spirit was drained. He declared, "I will never again play in a World Cup." This was not mere theatrics. It was profound sorrow. He felt as though the world had turned against him, that the referees had let him down, that the tournament had brought him pain instead of honor. At just 25, he felt older than his years. Brazil was anxious. Fans wept. Journalists raised doubts. Would the greatest player of his era ever don the yellow jersey again? Following 1966, Pelé experienced an emotional withdrawal. He dedicated himself to Santos, his family, and his healing process. The burden he carried began to ease a bit. However, the memories of England continued to linger. The mistreatment, the disregard from officials, the sense of betrayal, the feeling that he had been robbed of the opportunity to showcase his true talent. Yet, with time and distance, something else emerged. Clarity. Within Pelé's heart, a soft voice persisted, the same voice that had once reassured his father in 1950. "You will win the World Cup." And deep within, he understood. His journey with the World Cup was far from over. Not yet. The world still awaited one final chapter. One last masterpiece. One additional crown. And in 1970, fate would summon him once more, louder than ever, to deliver the most remarkable World Cup performance in the history of football. By the end of the 1960s, Pelé's connection with the Brazilian national team had grown complex. The aftermath of the 1966 World Cup still haunted him, both in body and spirit. The violence, the injuries, the humiliation, the tears, it had left a scar deeper than any physical wound. He had vowed never to participate in another World Cup. Never again would he expose himself to such brutality. Never again would he risk becoming the target of a global event that treated him like prey. However, as the 1970 World Cup drew near, a change began to take place. Brazil was gearing up for the tournament in Mexico, and the entire nation felt a stirring in the air, a yearning for something extraordinary. The generation that remembered 1950 still bore its pain. The generation that witnessed 1958 and 1962 continued to idolize Pelé. And the new generation, they craved their own narrative, their own hero, their own moment. The team needed Pelé. The fans needed Pelé. Brazil itself needed Pelé. The calls grew louder with each passing day. Newspapers urged for his comeback. Teammates came to his home to persuade him. The coaching staff offered their reassurances. Even political figures expressed their hopes that Pelé would reconsider. Yet, the choice lay solely with him, and the wounds of 1966 were still fresh. One evening, Pelé found himself alone, reflecting on his father. On the promise he had made as a young boy. On the glory he had attained. On the suffering he had faced. He thought about Brazil, not the federation or the officials, but the people. The millions of children who played barefoot in the streets just as he once did. The families who gathered around old radios to listen to the matches. The pride and joy that the sport brought them. Pelé came to a realization. Football was greater than the pain. Greater than the fear. Greater than the memory of 1966. He owed it to himself. He owed it to Brazil. He owed it to the boy who once promised to wipe away his father's tears. And so, quietly, gently, after years of uncertainty, Pelé made the decision to return. The Brazilian team of 1970 was unlike anything the world had ever witnessed. It fused artistry with intelligence, flair with discipline, joy with precision. The squad boasted legends. Jairzinho, the unstoppable winger. Tosteo, the elegant false nine, brilliant and composed. Gerson, the midfield maestro. Rivellino, the magician with the atomic left foot. Carlos Alberto, a graceful, powerful captain. Clodoaldo, the smooth defensive midfielder. And at the heart of it all, Pelé. An older, wiser Pelé. Not the young star of 1958. Not the injured player of 1966. But the complete footballer, mature, balanced, strategic, and more astute than ever. The team felt destined for greatness. The players forged bonds in Mexico like brothers. They joked, sang, and trained with infectious joy. Pelé, often the most playful, brought serenity to tense moments and laughter to long days. The altitude was challenging. The heat was fierce. The expectations were sky-high. Yet, the unity among the players formed a protective barrier around them. They trusted one another implicitly. They respected each other's strengths. They viewed themselves not as individuals, but as part of a harmonious symphony. And Pelé was their conductor. Brazil's opening match in Mexico was against Czechoslovakia. The world was eager to see if Pelé still possessed his magic. He did. Not only did he score, he mesmerized. One of his most memorable moments came when he attempted a long-range shot from midfield, noticing the goalkeeper off his line. The ball sailed just wide, mere centimeters from becoming one of the greatest goals in history. But the sheer audacity took the world's breath away. Brazil triumphed 4-1. The message was unmistakable. Pelé was back. Brazil's second match was against England, the reigning world champions. It turned into one of the most iconic games ever played. The match showcased perfection, tension, respect, beauty, and it produced two legendary moments. Moment 1, Pelé's header and Gordon Banks' miracle save. In the 17th minute, Jairzinho delivered a cross from the right side. Pelé soared above everyone, almost as if he were defying gravity, and unleashed a powerful header aimed at the bottom corner. It was a goal. Everyone in the stadium believed it was. However, England's goalkeeper, Gordon Banks, leaped and executed a save so remarkable that Pelé himself later remarked, "I scored that goal. Banks just blocked it." This moment became known as the greatest save in football history. Moment 2, Pelé and Bobby Moore, mutual respect. After the match concluded, Pelé and England's captain Bobby Moore swapped shirts. The photograph of these two legends, smiling, exhausted, and respectful, became one of the most treasured images in football. Brazil triumphed 1-0, but the match was so beautiful and honorable that both teams exited the field as heroes. In the semi-finals against Uruguay, Pelé crafted one of the most extraordinary moments ever witnessed on a football pitch. He chased a through ball. The goalkeeper charged forward. Instead of making contact with the ball, Pelé allowed it to roll past both of them, completely outsmarting the keeper. He dashed around, caught up with the ball, and shot just wide. Even though he missed, the world gasped. It was brilliance. Pure instinct. Pure Pelé. Brazil won 3-1. The final was on the horizon. June 21, 1970, Estadio Azteca, Mexico City. 110,000 spectators. Millions watching across the globe. The stage was set perfectly. The atmosphere was electric. The moment was historic. Brazil donned bright yellow. Italy sported their formidable blue. The temperature soared, the air was thick. Pelé stepped onto the field composed and confident. This was his moment. In the 18th minute, Rivellino sent a cross into the box. Pelé leaped above the towering Italian defender Tarcisio Bergnic and headed the ball into the net. The stadium erupted. Brazil 1-0 Italy. Pelé had made history as the first player to score in 3 different World Cup finals. Bergnic later stated, "Before the match, I told myself Pelé was just like any other player. I was wrong." As the match unfolded, Brazil showcased a style of football that the world had never witnessed before: fluid, artistic, and seemingly effortless. Each pass flowed seamlessly, as if the players were in perfect harmony with one another. Then came the pivotal moment. Clodoaldo skillfully maneuvered past 4 Italian defenders. He passed to Rivellino. Rivellino then found Jairzinho. Jairzinho located Pelé. Pelé paused. He took a moment to assess the field. And with a delicate touch, almost like a whisper, he rolled the ball to Carlos Alberto, who surged forward and unleashed a powerful shot into the net. This became the most remarkable team goal in World Cup history. Brazil triumphed with a score of 4-1, claiming their 3rd World Cup title. Under the regulations of that era, this victory allowed Brazil to retain the Jules Rimet Trophy permanently. Pelé, surrounded by his teammates, raised the trophy high above his head against the backdrop of Mexico City's sky. It was a moment captured in eternity, as if football itself had crowned its sovereign. Pelé achieved the extraordinary. 1958, the boy wonder. 1962, the injured champion. 1970, the eternal king. He remains the only player in history to have won 3 World Cups. Brazil erupted in celebration. Other nations offered their applause. Commentators hailed Pelé as the greatest of all time. Even players from rival teams acknowledged it openly. Pelé was the best. Only he made football resemble love. And Pelé? He wept tears of joy, reflecting on the promise he made to his father many years ago. The boy from 3 Hearts had realized it beyond all expectations. When the final whistle sounded in Mexico City in 1970, Pelé felt a deep transformation within himself. He had completed a journey that started on the dusty streets of Tres Carracos. He had fulfilled his promise to his father. He had triumphed on the world stage 3 times. For many athletes, that would have sufficed. For Pelé, it marked the end of one chapter, and the gentle beginning of another. Upon returning to Brazil after achieving football legend status, Pelé experienced a mix of joy and fatigue. At Santos FC, he continued to score goals, inspire fans, and attract massive crowds. Yet, deep inside, he felt that his time with Santos was nearing its natural end. He had been with the club since he was 15. He had evolved, matured, and transformed football while wearing that iconic white shirt. But now, at 30, he yearned for something new, not for fame or wealth, but for growth. He wanted to see football from a fresh perspective. The world was evolving. And Pelé was ready to evolve with it. Following the 1970 World Cup, Pelé quietly distanced himself from the Brazilian national team. He didn't make a grand announcement or hold an emotional farewell match. He simply acknowledged that he had fulfilled his purpose. He had brought joy to Brazil. He had achieved victory. He had created a footballing masterpiece. It was time for others to carry the yellow jersey into the future. Despite his worldwide fame, Pelé's financial situation was complex. He had invested in ventures that did not succeed, and he had placed his trust in individuals who did not always safeguard his interests. By the mid-1970s, he found himself in need of a new income stream. Around this time, the North American Soccer League, NASL, a small and struggling football league in the United States, sought to expand. They believed that football could become a significant sport in America, but they were missing a spark, a face, a phenomenon to ignite the movement. They needed a hero. They needed Pelé. Representatives from the New York Cosmos, a club supported by Warner Communications, approached Pelé with a proposal. Come to America. Play soccer in the land of baseball and basketball. Help develop the sport from its roots. Become the ambassador for the world's game. Initially, Pelé turned them down. He had his doubts. The NASL was still untested. American audiences didn't fully grasp football. The stadiums were inconsistent, the fields adapted from American football, and the quality of play was significantly lower than what Pelé was accustomed to. However, the Cosmos were relentless. They believed Pelé was more than just a player, he was a phenomenon. They thought he could spark America's passion for the sport. When Pelé visited New York City, everything shifted. The city captivated him, the towering skyscrapers, the bright lights, the vibrant energy. The multicultural atmosphere reminded him of Brazil. The potential rekindled memories of his youth. Pelé understood he had dedicated decades to the sport. Now, perhaps the sport could reciprocate, offering him the opportunity to inspire a new nation, a new generation, a new world. In 1975, Pelé surprised everyone. He signed with the New York Cosmos. Prior to Pelé's arrival, NASL games attracted only a few thousand fans. Media attention was scarce. Most Americans had a limited understanding of football, often relying on vague stereotypes. Then Pelé arrived at JFK Airport. News cameras surrounded him. Fans filled the hallways. Reporters crowded around. Children cheered his name. Celebrities welcomed him. America didn't merely accept Pelé. America embraced Pelé. Pelé's debut match with the Cosmos felt surreal. The stadium wasn't packed, at first. But the atmosphere was electric. People were eager to see the legend, to witness the man whose name had traveled the world. When Pelé scored, the crowd erupted with a level of excitement they didn't yet fully comprehend. Football had never felt so vibrant in America. In just a few months, attendance skyrocketed. Cosmos games transformed into social gatherings. Celebrities like Mick Jagger, Muhammad Ali, Elton John, Henry Kissinger, Robert Redford, and others began to take notice. Pelé was more than just a footballer. He became a worldwide ambassador of joy. Pelé recognized that his mission extended beyond merely winning games. He aimed to show Americans the elegance of the sport. He beamed with joy. He engaged with fans. He made football accessible. He clarified rules during interviews. He motivated children to get involved in the game. He visited schools. He inspired families. He accomplished for American soccer what no advertising campaign could achieve. He made people connect with the sport. With Pelé, the cosmos evolved into a formidable force. They brought in more stars: Franz Beckenbauer, Carlos Alberto, Giorgio Chinaglia. The team became a spectacle, a blend of skill, charm, and thrill. Stadiums filled with 40,000, then 60,000, then 70,000 supporters. Soccer began to embed itself in the American psyche. On October 1, 1977, Pelé played his farewell match, half with Santos, half with the Cosmos. The stadium was overflowing. The world was watching. Rain fell softly, as if the heavens themselves wished to partake in the homage. Pelé gave a final address about love, peace, and football. His voice trembled. The crowd roared his name. Players shed tears. Fans waved flags from every corner of the globe. It wasn't merely the conclusion of a career. It marked the end of an era, the era of the king. When Pelé hung up his boots, he left behind more than just goals or trophies. He left millions of new football enthusiasts, thousands of kids practicing in parks, growing youth leagues, national acknowledgement for the sport, a foundation for the future of American football culture. Without Pelé, the MLS as we know it today wouldn't exist. Without Pelé, the 1994 World Cup might not have taken place in the United States. Without Pelé, soccer wouldn't be among the fastest growing sports in the nation. His impact reshaped the future. The Cosmos era elevated Pelé from a mere footballer to a global ambassador, a link between cultures, nations, and generations. His journey didn't conclude. It transformed. Americans discovered what Brazilians had always understood. Pelé didn't just play football. When Pelé played his final match in 1977, split between Santos and the New York Cosmos, he left the field as a man who had completed an unparalleled sporting journey. However, he did not retreat from the world. In many respects, his impact was just beginning. The cheers of stadiums faded behind him. Yet a new kind of calling awaited, one filled with responsibility rather than applause. Pelé was no longer just an athlete. He had become a global icon. And the world was eager to listen to him. After retiring, Pelé confronted a challenging question. What does a legend do when the game concludes? Some athletes fade into obscurity. Some hold on to the past. Some lose themselves in the quiet. Pelé opted for a different route. He embraced the world with the same joy he had always displayed on the field. He traveled. He spoke. He listened. He learned. He realized that his name, his very presence, could unlock doors, inspire children, ease conflicts, and raise awareness for causes beyond football. Pelé began to understand something significant. He could be a force for good, not merely a memory captured on film. Throughout the 1980s and beyond, Pelé committed himself to humanitarian efforts. His dedication to helping children defined much of his public persona. He collaborated with UNICEF, UNESCO, various global literacy initiatives, anti-poverty organizations, peace movements, environmental projects. Pelé recognized that millions of children grew up in circumstances similar to his own: impoverished communities, failing schools, limited opportunities. He aimed to alter that destiny. He visited villages, schools, refugee camps, and community centers. He engaged with families, shook hands with children, encouraged young athletes, and used his fame as a platform for the unheard. Children loved him, not for his football prowess, but because he treated them with kindness and respect. Pelé once remarked, "Football gave me everything. Helping children is how I give back." In 1995, Pelé was appointed as Brazil's Minister of Sports, a decision that caught many off guard but turned out to be significant. He was not your average politician. He communicated softly, steered clear of conflicts, and prioritized reform over ideology. His most notable accomplishment during his tenure was the introduction of the Pelé Law, a piece of legislation designed to safeguard players' rights, diminish exploitation, and enhance transparency within Brazilian football. This law transformed the sports environment in Brazil and is still regarded as one of the nation's most important sports reforms. Pelé also served as Brazil's ambassador on the global stage, engaging with presidents, prime ministers, monarchs, and diplomats. He advocated for peace, cultural exchange, and the essence of Brazilian identity. Wherever Pelé went, throngs of fans followed. Wherever Pelé spoke, audiences listened intently. As the years rolled on, Pelé evolved into more than just a man. He became a cultural icon recognized worldwide. He made appearances in TV interviews, documentaries, commercials, films, notably Escape to Victory alongside Sylvester Stallone, educational programs, charity matches. Yet, Pelé never allowed fame to change who he was. He remained kind, affable, accessible, always wearing a smile, always eager to take photos, sign autographs, or hear someone's story. One journalist famously remarked, "Pelé is the only man who can make a president feel like a child and a child feel like a champion." Even after his professional playing days were over, Pelé continued to travel with football in his soul. He attended World Cups, award ceremonies, and exhibition matches. Fans would chant his name even years after his retirement. Numerous contemporary football stars, Ronaldo, Messi, Maradona, Mbappé, Ronaldinho, spoke of Pelé with deep respect. They viewed him not merely as a trailblazer but as the cornerstone upon which modern football was established. Whenever Pelé graced a stadium, crowds would leap to their feet. They cheered with the same passion they had in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. To see Pelé was to witness history. Behind the global icon was a man who valued simplicity. Pelé cherished family gatherings, serene evenings. Making music, he composed songs and even released albums. His animals, deep conversations, coffee shared with lifelong friends, joy, an abundance of joy. He was a man who always remembered his origins. Even during his most illustrious years, he would reminisce about his childhood ball crafted from rags, his mother's comforting meals, and his father's kind guidance. Pelé was once asked, "Who shaped you into the man you are today?" He replied gently, "My parents. Football was my passion. But they were my foundation." Despite his fame, Pelé remained grounded in humility. Being loved worldwide came with its own set of challenges. Pelé faced financial mismanagement, failing businesses, pressure from the media, invasions of his personal life, public scrutiny, criticism for his gentle stance on political matters, expectations that no one could realistically meet. Yet he weathered these challenges with poise. He seldom lashed out. He rarely voiced complaints. He hardly let negativity cloud his mission. Pelé recognized that true greatness stemmed not just from achievements, but from integrity. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Pelé's symbolic significance became increasingly clear. When he visited conflict-ridden areas, violence would halt so that children could meet him. When he attended international sports conferences, leaders welcomed him like royalty. When he advocated for education or addressed poverty, financial support often followed. When a young athlete encountered Pelé, their life transformed, even if just on an emotional level. One UN representative remarked, "Pelé contributed more to global peace than most politicians ever have." And in many respects, this was indeed accurate. He united nations through the universal language of sports. New generations continued to discover him. Via YouTube videos, through documentaries, through tales from grandparents, through FIFA video games, through posters in sports shops, through commentary from contemporary stars. His legend did not diminish over time. It only grew. It expanded because Pelé was a figure for all. Brazilians regarded him as family. Africans viewed him as a symbol of hope. Europeans appreciated him for his elegance. Asians found inspiration in him. Americans recognized him as a trailblazer. The world celebrated him as a source of joy. Pelé was not just a player of a certain time. He was eternal. The true essence of Pelé's legacy was not solely in his statistics, trophies, or goals, although they were remarkable. His lasting influence stemmed from his warmth, his humility, his smile, his desire to bring people together, his refusal to engage in hate, his faith in the power of joy. Pelé was a part of football. But even more than that, Pelé was a part of humanity. And while his playing career had ended, his influence continued to grow. The world still required Pelé. And Pelé still had so much to offer. As Pelé moved into the later years of his life, the 2010s and beyond, the world around him kept evolving at an astonishing rate. Football became bigger, faster, and more commercialized. Stadiums grew, technology revolutionized the game, new stars appeared, and fresh legends emerged. Yet amidst the clamor of modern football, Pelé stood as a quiet guiding star, a symbol that bridged generations. Regardless of how much the game transformed, his presence felt like a constant heartbeat. He was not just the greatest of his time. He was the cornerstone upon which today's football is constructed. As he aged, the world's love for him only intensified. Pelé kept attending events, speaking at ceremonies, and greeting fans well into his 70s. His gait became slower, his voice softer, but his smile remained as warm as ever. He cherished meeting young players. He enjoyed signing autographs for children. He loved reminiscing with longtime fans about matches from years gone by. To him, football was not a thing of the past. It was something he carried with him, gently, proudly, like a cherished memory. However, age brings challenges that even kings cannot evade. Years of rigorous physical activity, old injuries, surgeries, and the inevitable passage of time began to take a toll on Pelé's health. He faced hip issues, mobility challenges, and later underwent cancer treatments. Still, whenever he appeared in public, he made a point to wave, to smile, and to express gratitude. Whenever fans approached him, he did his utmost to acknowledge them. He didn't want the world to fret. He didn't wish to be perceived as fragile. He wanted to be remembered with joy. And even as his body weakened, his spirit remained radiant. Pelé spent a significant portion of his later years surrounded by his family, children, grandchildren, and those he cherished deeply. He relished simple pleasures, quiet dinners, storytelling, music, watching football matches, sharing laughter with loved ones. He also took joy in watching young Brazilian talents, Neymar, Vinicius, the upcoming stars, carrying on the legacy he once embodied. He penned messages of encouragement for them. He provided guidance. He celebrated their achievements. He supported them during tough times. To Pelé, true greatness was about giving, not receiving. As Pelé grew older, the world's admiration for him intensified. Statues were erected in Brazil and beyond. Documentaries honored his legacy. Clubs paid homage before games. Players dedicated their goals to him. Nations welcomed him as a distinguished guest. Museums showcased his jerseys and trophies. Stadiums echoed his name even in his absence. Wherever he went, people regarded him not merely as a celebrity, but as family. Pelé became a part of global culture, as universal as music, as enduring as art. Even when confined to a hospital bed in his later years, Pelé remained gracious. He continued to share messages brimming with warmth and positivity. He wrote about hope, unity, kindness, joy in sports, gratitude for life. When young players paid tribute to him, he responded with love. When nations celebrated football, he joined in their joy from a distance. When the world faced challenging times, he wrote with compassion. Even in suffering, Pelé chose to shine. On this day, at the age of 82, Pelé passed away in São Paulo. The news spread rapidly, rippling across continents like a quiet wave. Television programs interrupted their regular broadcasts. Clubs halted training sessions. Cities dimmed their lights. Commentators spoke in hushed tones. Fans worldwide wept openly, as if they had lost a grandfather, a friend, a cherished memory. In Brazil, thousands gathered outside the hospital. Nations lowered their flags. Players looked up to the sky during matches. Children donned old Santos jerseys and held handmade signs that read, "Obrigado, Rei," thank you, King. This was more than just the death of a footballer. It marked the end of an era he had forged. Pelé's funeral took place at Santos Vila Belmiro Stadium, the very pitch where he became the world's greatest. His coffin was positioned at midfield so fans could bid farewell. They came not for a show, but out of love. They wept, sang, prayed, and murmured their thanks. Some brought flowers. Others carried handwritten letters. Fathers lifted their children onto their shoulders and said, "This is Pelé. Remember his name." The procession through Santos attracted millions. People filled balconies, sidewalks, and rooftops. In that moment, Brazil was not mourning alone, the entire world shared in their grief. Tributes poured in from every generation. Kylian Mbappé. His legacy will never be forgotten. Lionel Messi. Rest in peace, legend. Cristiano Ronaldo. A simple goodbye will never suffice. Neymar. Before Pelé, football was merely a sport. Pelé transformed everything. Maradona, long before his own passing, once remarked, "Pelé was the best. I always held him in high regard. There will never be another." Coaches, presidents, world leaders, artists, musicians, all echoed the same truth. Pelé was irreplaceable. Pelé's legacy cannot be quantified. Not 1,283 goals. Not 3 World Cups. Not the countless records he shattered. His legacy is the emotion he instilled in the world. The joy of a child netting their first goal. The unity of fans celebrating together. The inspiration of believing that greatness is achievable, even for those who start with nothing. Pelé taught the world that football transcends being just a game. It embodies emotion. It represents humanity. It fosters connection. And he carried that message from the moment he picked up a rag ball in Bauru until his last breath. Pelé may have left this world physically, but his essence lives on. In every joyful kick of a football. In every child with big dreams. In every Brazilian singing in a stadium. In every fan who smiles at the thought of him. In every highlight reel that brings back the magic. In every heart that cherishes the beauty of the game. Pelé's legacy doesn't conclude with his death. It carries on in the countless lives he influenced. The boy from Tres Caracos, the one who once consoled his father, grew into the man who consoled the world. He will always be O Rei do Futebol, the king of football. Pelé's life was a remarkable journey that started with a rag ball in a small Brazilian town and culminated with the world at his feet. He emerged from modest beginnings, carried the aspirations of a nation, and spread happiness to millions across the globe. Through both triumphs and challenges, through wins and losses, he played with the same spirit he possessed as a child, brimming with wonder, creativity, and love. Even after his last match, Pelé never truly exited the field. His impact persisted in every smile he sparked, every young player he motivated, and every fan who found the enchantment of football through his name. And although he has left us, his legacy endures, not merely in goals or trophies, but in the emotions he evoked in the world, the conviction that greatness can emerge from anywhere, that kindness is significant, and that joy is meant to be shared. Pelé was more than just a king. He was a beacon. And some beacons never dim.